Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Pryweller, Conference Director for Plastics News. Welcome to Ask the Expert at the 2021 Plastics Caps and Closures Conference Virtual Edition. These sessions are designed to help you engage the professionals on a range of topics and to interact with questions. Today's Ask the Expert is sponsored by ORBIS Corporation. Our expert today is ORBIS Senior Product Manager Mike Ludka. In this session, Mike will address how a fully reusable collapsible bulk container for shipping caps and closures drives ROI. Mike will answer your questions after the presentation. To submit a question, open the Q&A box to the right of the video feed on the virtual event site and submit a question. Or if you're watching along on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, you can submit a question via those platforms. With that, I will turn things over to Mike Ludka of Orbis. Mike, the floor is yours.
Hey, good afternoon, Joe and everyone. Thanks for the introduction. As Joe mentioned, my name is Mike Ludka. I am a senior product manager at ORBIS Corporation. I have 11 years of packaging experience. The majority of that is around bulk packaging and then actual mobile packaging for distribution, all within the retail supply chain. Where we're going to start today is really a quotation from Jerry Greenfield, who happens to be the co-founder of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream. And what that is recycling and packaging. Businesses are changing all of the things because that's what consumers want. Now, I imagine I could have picked a dozen of different quotes that all had this same premise. I happen to choose this one from Jerry Greenfield because I'm from Wisconsin. And if you didn't know anything about Wisconsinites, it's we love cheese, we love ice cream, and we love pizza. But I think this is really going to be the foundation for the presentation that we're going to talk about here today. Consumers are driving us to make changes to better the environment and sustainability.
Hello, everyone. We've had some technical difficulties, it looks like. Hopefully, Mike will rejoin us in a minute. I want to mention while we're waiting that Mike is back. Well, I'll mention what I was going to mention later on. So, Mike, take it away.
Yeah, sorry about that. I clicked the wrong button, but we're back. So we were talking about consumers driving changes within our packaging for sustainability needs, right? So here's just another graphic about that premise. And the thing that really stands out to me on here is over in the right-hand corner, more than 3/4 of consumers expect businesses to be supporting efforts to stop climate change. I think it was 2 years ago, I was participating in the Caps and Closures Conference, and this concept of a consumer war on plastic was brought up. And when I left that conference 2 years ago, I went back to our organization, to Orbis, and said, what can we do? How can Orbis further support, this cause and initiative that's going on? And I think ultimately what we're going to be presenting here in a couple of slides is the results of that. So I want to introduce reusable transit packaging. I realize not all of you may understand what that is. It might be new terminology. So reusable transit packaging is really supply chain and material handling based. It's a substitution of single-use materials like paper, corrugate, and wood into reusable materials such as plastic or metals. What I have on the screen as a graphic is really looking at the full supply chain within the beverage industry. And I think this is a really good example to use to demonstrate reusable packaging, what it is, and the impact of it. And if you look at the beverage supply chain, there's essentially no packaging waste. And that began actually in the 1950s with the conversion into beverage plastic shells that are used to transport finished goods of PET bottles through the supply chain, ultimately to the consumer. What you'll see on the graphic is there's a couple different spots. So we don't just focus on the finished good packaging, but we break it down further downstream than that, which is inbound packaging. So if you're looking at beverage, that is cans or plastic preforms and closures, which we're all familiar with. But then we get to finished goods. So that brings into warehousing and distribution of that product to the retail store, the display of that, and ultimately also recycling. The reason we lay this out is when we're looking at sustainability, one of the most important things to look at is at it from a holistic point of view. So not singularly focusing in on one area within your supply chain. We have to look at it holistically. So why are customers making the push to reusable packaging today? Well, we already kind of discussed the consumer impact of that, and the push for consumers to want more sustainable packaging within their products. But beyond that, there are positive operational benefits with reusable packaging as well. So there is a large cost savings initiative, and if you think about just the pure definition of a reusable packaging, you need less of packaging because, in theory, you are reusing it, right? You're not buying that packaging every single time. You're reusing what you have. Right? The other trend we're seeing a lot is as automation becomes more and more prevalent. So whether that's robotic arms or conveyance, plastic is becoming more of a requirement in those areas versus a nice to have. And the reason for that is the dimensional consistency that you can hold on plastic or metal packaging over time, and how that interfaces with the equipment that you're using. So I showed the beverage supply chain a few slides earlier. Frankly, one of the applications that has been slow to adopt reusable packaging has been closures. The industry is still largely using single-use packaging for their warehousing and distribution to their end customers. So the image that I have here kind of displays what that typical packaging and supply chain is today that's broadly used. So we're looking at a triple wall corrugated Gaylord that you may hear called, which requires to be placed on a 40 by 48 inch, heat treated wood pallet, and that is how it's used to get transported. Now, what I want to show you is imagine what that same supply chain loop for caps and closures would be if we use reusable packaging. So we're not recycling the single-use packaging anymore, but we're reusing that same piece of packaging each and every single time. So that's the big difference, is the recycling versus the reusability aspect, and what that means, again, to your sustainability and carbon emissions footprint, but then also to your bottom line. So from here, I'm going to introduce those solutions that we developed coming out of the conference 2 years ago on how we can support the industry and that consumer war on plastics. So what I have up here for you is two different forms of solutions. We have what we call a rigid bulk pack on the left and a sleeve pack on the right. At the end of the day, the sleeve pack is going to have your highest cubic volumes and greatest return ratios, which make it an absolute ideal fit for caps and closures. Bulk pack is typically a higher load capacity, which makes it probably better equipped for denser products like preforms that are distributed before blow molding into PET bottles. However, why I wanted to include it here today is to at least show you that if for some reason as you dig into this, you find that your end customers are using tilt tables that require side discharge, rigid bulk could be a good fit. If that is a requirement, you can kind of see that in the circular image there. There is a door on the side of the panel that opens and shuts, which allows side discharge on a tilt table, which is not an easy thing to accomplish on a sleeve pack. Because sleeve packs are the ideal fit for caps and closures, I'm going to focus the rest of the presentation around the sleeve pack. But certainly, if you have questions on rigid bulk pack, drop it in the chat box or contact me there afterwards, and we can discuss it. So I'm going to get into a little bit more detail of a sleeve pack and why that is an ideal fit and why we developed it. So from an ergonomic perspective, there's a couple things there. The overall tear weight of the pack is 87 pounds, so which is very light for bulk packaging within the reusable packaging industry. Why that's important really is twofold. One is that tear weight allows your operator to manually move the pack because there's multiple pieces. So if you saw from the slider previously, you have a pallet, a top cap, and a sleeve, right? So it combined, it's 87 pounds, but each individual component, weighs less than 30. So that allows a nice OSHA movement. Where there are areas within your manufacturing plant that are fork-free environments or space is really tight where you can't get material handling equipment in there, you have the ability to move this by hand. The other reason where that tear weight becomes really important is when you start looking at truckload optimization and the density. So you get 42 cubic feet of usable volume for product in each one of these packs. Because the tear weight of the packaging itself is so low, you get to utilize that 442 cubic feet, which means we're gonna be loading out or cubing out the trailer, versus weighing it out. Other thing you'll notice is the hygienic aspect of this. So with reusability becomes a need to periodically clean to make sure that there's no dirt or debris on there. The smooth flat panels, the flat pallet deck are all really cleanable and cleaning friendly. Here's just a close-up of some of those features that I talked about a little bit early on. So a key thing within food, CPG packaging industry, right, is the ability on your panels to have sealed edges. So that's what we have here. So all the panels, all the tops, bottoms, any cutout areas that you need for features. One of the unique things that Orbis can offer is we're gonna seal each and every of those areas so that there's no way for debris to get inside or harbor bacteria. Some of the other features, the main feature we have is locking mechanisms. So you'll see we have a lock within the pallet, which holds the sleeve into place, which allows you to dump the finished good product and get it into the supply chain at your customer location without the sleeve falling out, obviously. And then the pallet also has locks in there to really stabilize the whole pack for transportation. So here I want to just show, I mentioned cubic volume a few times throughout the presentation, and the closure industry, as I had mentioned, has been slow to adopt reusable packaging. One of the reasons I think for that, and I've heard it multiple times, from multiple customers, right? This quotation that cubic volume is king, right? And I completely agree with that. But that's one of the challenges that we had is when you look at a expendable pack like the triple wall corrugated Gaylord, it's designed to be used one time, so it doesn't have to handle the rigors of the supply chain for reuse, right? So in order to handle those rigors within reusable packaging, we typically have to make the panels a little bit thicker, which takes up cubic volume, and you can see that within the chart that your triple wall corrugated Gaylord is going to have more cubic volume of use than any other returnable packaging pieces. What we found during our development over the last 2 years when we were speaking to those same customers, though, is we identified that the current reality is while the corrugated Gaylords may have a higher published cubic volume for usage and space, the reality is their customers aren't using it that way. They're not filling it all the way to the top. They're not utilizing that full cubic volume, because the rest of the packaging isn't built really to sustain that type of weight load throughout the supply chain. So I think ultimately what we're getting at is we're going to be able to maximize or to match the density of cubic volume that you get in closures, moving forward, which with cubic volume is king, that is a key statement to understand. So another quote here that I want to read. We are seeing an extraordinary impact on global supply chains. To really change the way they tackle these disruptions, companies need to change the way they work and think. Companies need to think more sustainably. So that's from Omira Khan, professor of supply chain management at Royal Holloway University. The reason I included this is if we all look back at over the past year, one of the things that I think we could all probably admit to is supply chains can be fragile. International supply chains can be even more fragile. So what this means to me when I look at the quotation and the learnings over the past year is it's no longer just a push from our consumers on sustainability and climate change as reasons to convert to reusable packaging, but now there are also internal supply chain pressures that are becoming more relevant. Becoming more efficient and minimizing that reliance on suppliers. So we have two converging ideologies now that bode well for reusable packaging in the future in your organizations. It's consumers are asking for it, and internally you may need it to be more efficient to react to today's world. So how do we get started on this? What I wanted to show just briefly, and I don't expect you to read everything that's on the table. I'm just going to highlight a few things. The main premise is, Orbis, we've developed tools to help drive your reusable packaging conversion. Right. So one of those tools is what's on the screen here. Is it's an ROI calculator, and what this is really meant to do is it's going to look at your current operation and the use of expendable. So we're going to calculate really what the waste is that you're seeing in there, and that waste calculation is going to not only provide a sustainability factor for carbon emissions, but it's all and that footprint, but it's also going to provide a quantitative ROI on annual cost savings that you can see as well. The reason that we have developed this is, I think we know change management isn't always easy, right? Driving change isn't easy. So we want to be able to have tools that are readily available to those interested parties to help the change management and drive project exposure within your companies. So key thing here, the example we're showing, this is for a closure application. You're seeing $100,000 of annual savings, a big sustainability impact, and a payback of less than 18 months. Is very, very common. Contact us for more information. So driving on that train of thought, right? If you're thinking about reusable packaging and bringing this and driving that change within your organization, couple tips. Identify a champion within the business, right? Who at senior management is going to support the project. So when you run into challenges from others, because you always will in change management, you have that support system. Determine what success looks like. Right? There are a lot of benefits of reusable packaging. Every organization is a little bit different, right? You may have one glaring gap or issue that is above all the others, right? Identify what that is first, and let's work to build a quantitative model that addresses those challenges with the ancillary ones behind it. Involve your supply chain network, right? It's back to the beverage supply chain graphic we had earlier, right? Look at it holistically. So who are those stakeholders, and make sure that those stakeholders have a voice, right? That is your internal operations, that is transportation, that is your customers in those facilities and sites. Once you've gained that interest and intrigue, let's test it out, right? Well, let's coordinate a trial. Let's do a small scale to identify if there are any other learnings or gaps that need to be addressed before completely diving in. From there, pace yourself, right? If you're a closure manufacturer and you're supplying to 10 different customers and 20 different sites, start small. Don't anticipate you're going to make this change over a 6-month period, right? Take a methodical approach to start with one customer and one location, turn that one customer in one location into 5 locations. And then from there, it'll spread more positively, and you won't you won't strain yourself too much and stress yourself out. And then from there, train, right? So once you've gotten that success, make sure we're training our employees, right? Reusable packaging is a little bit different than expendable packaging, right? Something as simple as, hey, we've got this is an asset that our business has now. How do we ensure that we have the measures in there that the reverse logistics is happening so that we can reuse it and maintain that positive ROI? How are we going to ensure cleanliness and material handling safety, right? So just a couple tips. I hope the last 20 minutes of what I went through was intriguing and informative for you all. I love reusable transit packaging. I'm so happy I got into the industry. It's the best time, I think, in our industry's history to be part of it. And I'm excited about what the future holds. So with this, I'll kind of open it up to any questions the audience may have for me.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Terrific presentation and a great solution that a lot of caps and closures manufacturers should take heed of anyway. We're now open to take questions. To submit a question, open the Q&A box located to the right of the video feed of the virtual event site and submit a question. Or if you're watching along on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, you can submit a question via those platforms. So while we're waiting for questions, I had a few for you. I'm curious. I guess that's great. You at the 2019 Caps and Closures Conference, you found the talk on sustainability and some of what's needed over there interesting, and got back to it. I'm curious, what within Orbis were you doing reusable packaging, material handling solutions before this kind of thing, and was this just a change in good moving caps and closers, or is this fairly new in general, being at the big push into reusable packaging anyway?
We've been doing reusable packaging for a long time, and it started with 1958, the conversion of plastic shells for the beverage industry. So we've been doing this a long time. We typically design our products specific to a supply chain loop or an application, because every application is a little bit different. So, for example, one of the things that we run into closures with our existing product portfolio that we use for plastic preforms, or movement of other products within the food and manufacturing industry is, closures are small, right? So you can get a lot of them in a pack, but they're also coming out hot, right? So if you heard the term ovalization before, in the past, before we developed the new products to solve for ovalization and some other things, that was never an option, right? Because you wouldn't be able to use the bulk packaging we had before and preserve the closure quality.
So the shape and the really the product quality of it was affected a bit before. So this was something that addressed some of those issues, I guess, anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, question from the audience that came in: what type of platform is required for this, and who would supply that?
Yeah, there's two trains of thought of that, and we've seen both, right? So sometimes the end customer, they'll pull the solution, right? They'll see the sustainability impact of this and want to pull their supplier base to utilize the packaging. And in some cases, they may purchase those assets. In other cases, we've seen the suppliers identify this as a cost savings opportunity for them, as well as a sustainable play, so that they'll push their end customers to adopt a solution this way. It always works both when there's collaboration between the two, but we've seen instances of both supplier based and owning of the assets, and then also end customer based.
Okay, great. You talked very briefly about cleaning. A question that just came in from the audience: are your products designed to be cleaned? The viewer says we wash most of our reusable packaging before taking them to our production lines. So can these be cleaned easily?
Yeah, absolutely. The images that I have probably didn't show it the best, but one of the things, the benefits of a sleeve pack is that the panels themselves it's a singular flat surface, very smooth, so easy to be wiped down and washed. All those edges are sealed, right, to prevent debris from getting inside or water permeation. Right, so designed to be to clean manually. We still see that in most cases is the manual cleaning. There are automated cleaning systems out there. Orbis reusable packaging management does some of that service for cleaning, where we'll have pallet washers that can do that in a more automated way. But in most cases, the customers are doing it on site and doing it manually.
Great, excellent. What material are these solutions made of anyway for reusable packaging? What are you using for this?
Yeah, predominantly we're using polypropylene, which everyone's very familiar with, or a high density polyethylene. The nice thing about reusable packaging as well is the majority of the plastics that we use actually are recycled, right? So there's a large percentage of recycled material, either recycled polypropylene or recycled polyethylene, that goes into making the pallets, the top caps, and the sleeves.
Oh, that's great. So they're sustainable on that end too, anyway, with the type of material that you're using. Question from the audience: does the platform that you're using need to be tipped through 180 degrees?
Yeah, I mentioned it just very briefly, but when you look at these solutions, especially the sleeve pack, when it gets to the final destination and customer wants to obviously utilize that packaging for the finished good product, typically it's going to be dumped, right? So there'll be dumpers on site, which will take the bin vertical and dump all the contents out. We have seen tilt tables right at the 180 degrees. We do have some functionality for that, not necessarily in the sleeve pack. That would be where you would need a rigid bulk container if they do have tilt tables that need that side discharge. Otherwise, working with the end customer to adopt a dumper system versus a tilt table.
Okay, great. What's the weight load and stacking capacity of this OPT solution that you have?
Yeah, specifically the sleeve pack that we showed there and developed for closures, it's 600 pounds per pack, and then you can stack that up to 4 high within your warehouse.
Okay, great. And how many turns can you use for these reusable containers, OPTE solutions? Anyway, what's your average, and what do you see with some of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We get asked that a lot. How long? When they're doing an ROI model, because this is a capital investment that you have to make, right? It's an asset,
right,
for your company. How long are these going to last in the system? The neat thing about reusable packaging and the materials that we use in plastic or metal, it's never going to degrade with use in their system, right? You're using it, with water and the application, that the material is not going to break down molecularly or anything else, right? So from that perspective, you can use it for forever, right? What we typically see is when we're seeing end of life damage, it's coming from the material handling environment. So that's where you get into, the need to train your customers to make, or your employees to make sure that they're not treating this like a wood pallet would be, because if you run into a wood pallet with a forklift, you're going to be breaking deck boards. Nails are going to start showing through, but it's not necessarily always a prominent issue because you're only using it once, right? So once it leaves, it's no longer your problem, right? So because of those variables, we really get a wide range of usage rates. And if you're interested in doing the program more, we're willing to work with you and develop that ROI with you.
Right. So it depends on the application. I imagine some of this can be customized per application too. Is that right?
One of the benefits, I think, of that sleeve panel is you do have the ability to kind of customize the heights of that. So like I said, our standard pack is the 42 cubic feet of internal volume. You can stack that 2 higher in a trailer, typically 4 high then in a warehouse setting. If for some reason you prefer to stack 3 high in a trailer, you can go and minimize your cubic volume. You can adjust that sleeve pack height to fit that need.
Excellent. Last question I have anyway. If anybody else asks any others, there's still a couple minutes left for questions. But I'm curious. You mentioned that the caps and closure market before had been kind of slow to adopt this kind of solution. They've been going with expendable packaging up till now with some of this anyway. Have you found early success with some of this of being switching over to this kind of reusable packaging solution?
Yeah, we are. So I think that was twofold, right? Partly it was on our industry for not developing the right solution until now, and I think also within the industry, right? When you look at closures, they're so dense, right? So they package up well. So when you look at the whole supply chain, there is a cost savings on this one, but maybe there were bigger ones, 20, 15, 10 years ago, right? So now I think the trends are converging between consumers asking for more sustainability, internal need to get more efficient within the supply chain. So now we're looking at those other areas within the supply chain that hasn't been converted that now makes sense to do so.
Great. Excellent. Well, Mike, do you have any final comments or parting words you want to leave the audience with today before we end the session?
One of the things with Orbis is we're happy to help. So I think I'll have my contact information up on the slide here shortly. If you have any questions, any follow-up, again, interested in driving change within your organization, please reach out. Be very happy to discuss that program with you.
Excellent. And the email address for Mike just popped up on the screen. So he'll be happy to answer any questions or talk further about the program, how it can be used for your organization. Again, I want to thank Mike Lutka of Orbis for sharing details of this new pallet and sleeve pack solution that you talked about. If you have additional questions, again, please reach out to Mike directly and he'll be glad to help. Today's Ask the Expert session will also be available for viewing on the events section of Plastics News website. I want to remind you, don't forget to join us this afternoon at the Plastics Caps and Closures Conference for a lot more coming up. At 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Haley Ann Friedman of M. Holland Company will address 3D printing for caps and closures. This will be followed by our participatory roundtable discussion on market conditions that will follow along from Christine O'Keefe's presentation from Fredoni Group this morning, and we can talk more about how market conditions might be affecting your company in a participatory discussion at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And then we'll end the conference at 3:30 with a panel featuring finalists for the Plastics Caps and Closures Innovation Award, to be followed by the awarding of this year's winner. I'm Joe Pryweller with Plastics News. Thanks for joining us at this Ask the Expert session. Stay tuned for a message from Orbis.